Sure, that's not very loud, but.
Yes, Rashmi, nice to meet you.
Do you want me to, when I finish, should I hand it to you or just directly, or you are the co-organizer? So you'll come back to the stage?
I think Chris will be, and
Chris?
Amanda will be coming up.
So just invite the, I can just invite the two of them? Okay, so I'll just invite
Chris.
you and Amanda.
Good morning, everyone. If everyone could please find a seat, that'd be great. If everyone could please find a seat, that'd be great. Good morning. We're going to get started. Just going to start talking and people can find a seat. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. Great. Well, welcome to the big event. Happy 50th anniversary, ERG. I'm Rashmi Sahai, your ERGAN president, and I'm so excited to see us all gathered here today. It's been 10 years since we got together like this, and let me tell you, this second big event has been a long time coming. 5 years ago, when I first started as ERGAN president, one of the first meetings I joined was a big event planning meeting, but then with the pandemic, ERGAN board member turnover and ERGAN board member burnout, we just couldn't get the planning of this event off its feet. But then ERG turned 50 years old, which a huge milestone and one that definitely needed to be celebrated properly. If the second big event was going to happen, this would be the year to do it. Two brave and committed ERGs stood up to seize the opportunity. ERG manager Amanda Okamoto and and ERGAN DEI chair Chris Hyun. This event would absolutely not be possible without their dedication and hard work. And I'm really grateful to their leadership. So I want to take a moment to thank them properly. Please come up here. Come up, come up, come up. And Sam, if you want to come up as well. Yeah. So these are for you guys.
Thank you.
From the ERGAN board.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Sam Aarons, MS07. I am also here to say thank you to Amanda and Chris for their amazing work organizing this event. I know firsthand what it takes to put it together, having been part of the organizing committee for the first one of these 10 years ago and part of the organizing committee this year. So we also, on behalf of the organizing committee and the faculty, want to say thank you to both of you for the amazing amount of work it takes. You've been working on it for months, day and night. We're so grateful. And we have a little thank you gift. I want to show everybody what this is. Hold on. We have a spherical cow print, one of a kind.
Wow.
So thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate you.
I also want to thank all the volunteers, students, alumni, emeritus staff who have been working hard behind the scenes to make this event happen. This is truly the ERG Alumni Network at its best. But the ERG Alumni Network is not just the big event. There's a lot that goes on in between the years to keep us all connected. We organize happy hours and networking sessions and hikes. We provide mentorship and a space to connect ERGs across generations. We provide ERG with valuable perspective, and we step up for students anytime they ask for help. So I also want to take a moment to recognize the other ERG and board members. So when I call your name, please just stand up and wave. We have Secretary Lindsay Franson. Outgoing Special Projects Officer, Chad White. Student Alumni Relations Chair, Dakota Peckerty. Oh, there you are. Former Communications Chair and current Tech Master, Carter Brooks. And we also have Treasurer Heidi Fuchs, Communications Chair Jamie Fine, Incoming Special Projects Officer Maggie Winslow, and outgoing webmaster John Callaway, who couldn't be here with us today. Many of us have been on the board for 4 years or more, and we are ready to pass the baton on to other ERGs who might have fresh ideas and energy to contribute. So as you're enjoying the event today and feeling inspired by your fellow ERGs, I'd like you to think about how you can stay engaged with the ERGAN Alumni Network after this weekend and how you can help contribute to, oh, yes, thanks, Chad. How you can help contribute to keeping the network thriving in the future. We have a very, very short engagement survey where you can answer this question. It'll be posted throughout the event, so you don't have to do it now, but please take a moment to do it. Like I said, it's very short. And also, you can also just come talk to me anytime. I would love to chat with you, especially if you're interested in being president. But any other ideas are welcome as well. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to our chair, Duncan Callaway. Have a wonderful big event, and yeah, I hope to chat with many of you throughout the day.
Thank you, Rashmi. Welcome, everybody. Wow, it's just such an honor to be part of this organization. On the 50th in particular, so my own personal story is that the year that Ned Birdsall sort of began and chaired the Energy and Resources Committee, I was born. And so it's pretty remarkable to think that the duration of this incredible graduate group spans also the duration of my own life, and I get to stand here before you guys and welcome you. So what I wanted to do is just a brief update about where ERG is, where we've been for the past 10 years. I know you're reading my letter in the annual ERGAN alumni newsletter, but just in case you forgot some of the details, I'll try to not spend too much time on this. But I think what's wonderful about ERG is that for 50 years we've been staying true to the same principles. The way that I would say it is that we study the planet's most crucial socio-environmental problems with a focus on rigor, innovation, and problem solving. And we rely on building interdisciplinary linkages rather than having disciplinary silos. We rely on fostering a culture that recognizes the many perspectives that we all have and the value that we create when we bring all those together. We have now 8 Senate faculty, which is pretty remarkable, I think, considering where ERG began 50 years ago. We have 2 incredibly active and important adjunct faculty, 3 active emeritus faculty, and 2 incredible staff. Our student population is about 25 master's students, so it's something like in the mid to low teens. We graduate every year, and I'm happy to talk. A few of you have asked me about this, sort of the size and why I think it's important that we kind of maintain that type of a master's class. But we also, since ERG started, we've certainly grown our Ph.D. program. So we have about 40 Ph.D. students in steady state nowadays. We're also actively teaching undergraduates. Actually, our undergraduate enrollments are some of the highest on campus. So although we're still a graduate group, we have a lot to do at the undergraduate level. And so when we measure our impact, when I think about our impact, some of it has to do with our teaching and our alumni. So our teaching, we have a lot of enrollments. Our alumni, I'm not going to bother telling you guys how incredible you are, but we definitely brag a lot about you. There's also research and outreach impact, that we have been working on many of the same themes over the years. So equitable access to resources, including water and electricity, a lot of work on pathways to decarbonization, usability of climate science, and environmental and climate justice. So some of the just like direct impact that we've had in the last 10 years since our last big event is helping to establish the US EPA's social cost of carbon. Isha Ray led the development of the UNESCO World Water Assessment Report. We published, Dan Kamen was very involved in research on global impacts of carbon offset markets. Myself with Amol Fadki and ERG current student Emilia Hojkovic worked on roadmaps for US grid capacity expansion, and that's led to channeling billions of dollars of spending on transmission. Just a few examples. So since our last big event, some other things just in terms of organization. So we were part of CNR, the College of Natural Resources, at the time of the last big event, but we've really settled in. And I can say that it's been extremely successful for us to be part of the College of Natural Resources, whether it's faculty and staff hiring and the support we get for that, fundraising and the support we get for that, our move to Giannini. There's also a new Master's in Climate Solutions, which is a 1-year master's program that I'd be happy to talk to you all more about in the halls. We've also, as you might have noticed, we've moved to an administrative model with an internal chair. So Dan Kamen, who's somewhere in the room, was our first internal chair, and I'm the second. Dan, I think, was extremely successful with regard to faculty hiring and building revenue, especially with regard to our summer session. And I've been focusing myself just on community and belonging and student funding and the student experience. So looking forward to the next 10 years, we do have a few departing faculty that we're going to have to replace. So that's one of our big challenges. And of course, we've got a changing global landscape, both environmental and political, to navigate. And I think we're all still trying to figure out what the right solutions are going to be. But I firmly believe, and I hope you all firmly believe, that continuing to focus on interdisciplinary strength and capacity, And for us, as the folks that are employed and studying at UC Berkeley, continuing to engage with all of you, our alumni, is going to be extremely important to maintaining and enriching the capacity of our community. So thank you all for coming. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll hand it off to David Ackerly.
Wow, that is a full room. Thank you so much, Duncan. I'm David Ackerly, Dean of Rausser College of Natural Resources. I've been at Berkeley 20 years, actually 20 years this year. I don't know, after arriving, when I first became aware of ERG, I actually joined the executive committee as an affiliate at some point in the past. And I can just say that from that, or whatever early introduction to then, I'm in my 7th year as dean, to being dean of the college and having ERG as part of the college, it has been nothing but intellectual pleasure and personal pleasure at the extraordinary community, the faculty, the students. I really, on behalf of the dean's office in particular, I really want to extend my thanks and appreciation. You cannot imagine how meaningful it is to have productive relationships, both with chairs, Duncan and Dan, and Amanda and Candace. So you just have to thank them again. It's a wonderful, I mean, for me, having come in as dean after ERG was already in the college, it's hard for me to imagine the college without ERG. It is such a round out to the intellectual profile in relation to the other departments and everything we do. John is going to speak much more, not to steal his thunder, about the history, but just thinking about 50 years in this moment, I was a little older than Duncan in those years, but if Richard Nixon could form the EPA, anything must be possible, right? Well, we didn't think this was possible. And obviously, everything we know about intellectual history, everything we know about political history, it does not run in straight lines. And the work of ERG, embedded in all the work at Berkeley towards a sustainable and just future, turns out to be just as important, just as hard, and really it will never end. There will always be political, social, and financial and intellectual forces that are pulling in other directions. So the commitment of communities like this will always have a role, for better or worse, I guess. It's not a problem that will simply be solved. I wanted to, it is the role of deans to be the object of suspicion from the faculty. It is the role of deans to try to dispel that suspicion. And again, it says a lot, and obviously with everything we do in the dean's office, of course, faculty hiring is often right at the top of the list, really being committed to graduate support. But when I think about ERG in relation to this community, every department has a culture, a college has a culture, but ERG has a personality. And maybe part of that is because it has such personalities. But in particular, to stay small in a good way for 50 years in a culture that is just bent on growth is a very particular commitment. It also means that every person who departs and every person who joins, it's like, oh my gosh, how can ERG ever be the same when this person leaves and when this person comes in? And you know what? It isn't the same and it stays wonderful. And I have great confidence it will stay that way in the future. Finally, I would be remiss not to extend my thanks to you all, also on the front of everything on the subject of everything you give to Berkeley, everything you give to ERG. The Big Give, Duncan mentioned yesterday, raised just shy of $45,000 from 135 donors, the most ever for a Big Give for ERG. Thank you all, more than 7 gifts, over $1,000 individually. Absolutely extraordinary. It really shows your dedication. But my job as dean is to remind you, you don't have to wait for next year's Big Give. So if you are inspired by this weekend, you can pay it forward any day of the year. And what you do means so much to the students and the faculty. Your support is extraordinary. So thank you again. Now, before I leave, I have this wonderful front row seat, and I'm afraid my absence may be noted. I now shortly need to go welcome this year's transfer students, junior transfer students to Berkeley who are here today. Those have been accepted to think about whether they'll come to Berkeley, so I will be absent for a little while and return later in the day. So thank you very much, and I'm going to hand it to Chris and Amanda.
Good morning and welcome to the big event again. Woo! So we're going to keep the announcements short because we're going to have another time of announcements. So at 11 o'clock, we're going to recreate this photo from 2015, depending on whenever John decides to end with his talk. So Jayla is going to come up here. You have her smile. We'll take a photo. If you are an ERGie from the 1970s, are you here from the 1970s ERGies? Woo! Thank you for being here. We'll also take a special photo, not right after that. Sarah's going to come up, talk about networking for a few minutes, and then we'll have you come up on stage and we'll take a photo of you all as well. Use these QR codes for donating, for scheduling, and to share all your lovely photos that you'll be taking today. Now we're going to go on to a video that was made by Alex Hall Rocha, who we gathered folks, who couldn't make it today. And so we'll see ERGies from around the world. It's a 3-minute video.
Hi, ERGies. I am so sad to be missing the big events this weekend. I just want to say that ERG is and will always be a monumental part of my life, and this is because of the amazing people that I have met at ERG. Even after graduation, I just continue to meet amazing ERGies around the world who are doing amazing work, and I think it continues to inspire me in this amazingly chaotic and crazy times to know that our work matters and we can make a difference in this world. I'm so sad to miss you all this weekend, and I'm rooting for us all.
Hey fellow ERGies, this is Dimitri from the class of 2014. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for the big event this year, but I'm definitely there with you all in spirit. And I hope all of you use this moment of community and inspiration to give you the energy for the fight ahead, because it's more important now than ever.
Hi, I'm Greg Nemeth. I'm an ERG Ph.D. from 2007, and since then I've been a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, sometimes called the Berkeley of the Midwest. 3 words on ERG: stimulating, collaborative, and just open-minded people, and it really opened up my world. I really miss seeing you all there this weekend, so enjoy.
Hi, I'm Bailey Green. My 3 words are water, climate, health. What ERG has enabled me to do over the last 30 years is to turn sewage into potable water using a nature-based solution, recovering renewable natural gas from end-pond digesters, and recovering and reusing nutrients in the form of algal biomass. I'm also teaching climate science and climate solutions at College Year in Athens, and I am promoting and practicing global health, environmental justice. I am deeply grateful for my mentors and professors, John Holdren, Dick Norgard, and the late Bill Oswald. Thank you.
Hey everybody, this is Adam Orford. I was in the ERG Master's and PhD program from 2015 to 2021. I'm currently in Bergen, Norway, climbing a hill, and I work at the University of Georgia. I'm about to start at Fordham University School of Law. If I had to think of one thing, one message for ERGies right now in this difficult time, just don't give up. Never stop fighting. They want you to stop fighting, and that's part of the plan, right? So lots and lots of people believe what you believe. Find them, work with them, make whatever you're doing a little better than it was before you got there, and everything's gonna be okay. Good to see everybody. Take care.
Hi, I'm Kathy Koshland, Professor Emerita in the Energy and Resources Group. I've been part of the ERG community for over 35 years. It's my academic sweet spot, where so many of the issues that I care about get examined, discussed, argued over. ERG and the ERGies are inspiring, creative, and a source of hope, and we do need that today. Go Bears.
Good morning, everyone. It is my great honor to introduce our keynote speaker today, a scientist, a policy leader, and one of the most influential voices in science and environmental policy over the past half-century, Dr. John Holdren. Dr. Holdren is the Teresa and John Hines Research Professor of Environmental Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School and Emeritus Professor of Energy and Resources at our very own Energy and Resources group here at UC Berkeley. The program he helped shape into the remarkable and unique interdisciplinary institution it is today. He served as a science advisor to both President Clinton and President Obama and was director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. In that role, Dr. Holdren shaped national policy on climate change, energy innovation, public health, and science education, and was instrumental in restoring science to its rightful place in decision-making at the highest levels of government. If only that were still the case in Washington today. Science in decision-making. Throughout his remarkable career, Dr. Holdren has been a tireless advocate for using science and technology to confront the world's toughest challenges. His work has bridged academia, government, and international collaboration, earning him numerous honors, including the MacArthur Genius Fellowship and the Public Welfare Medal from the National Academy of Sciences, among many others. We are incredibly fortunate to hear from a leader whose contributions have been profound. A voice of clarity, courage, and unwavering commitment to evidence-based decision-making, shaping the future of science, public policy, and the planet we all share. Please join me in welcoming Dr. John Holdren.
Well, thank you very much, Mariam, for that very kind introduction, and thank you all for the warm welcome. It's a huge pleasure to be back here 10 years after the 40th celebration of the existence of ERG. As this outline indicates, I'm going to cover a fair amount of ground. I may tell you more than you wanted to know about the origins of ERG, and I'm going to start, in fact, with a little bit of how I came to the views and the stances that were important in my role, together with Ned Birdsall and many others, in founding ERG in the first place. And if there's a little time left at the end, I will do an addendum on the current crisis in science in this country and really the world. But let me start with how ERG came to be. And I'll start with the personal antecedents. That is, what got me interested in trying to do something like what we did in the beginning at ERG. And I'm really going to, in all these remarks, concentrate on the first 10 years. So my apologies to everybody who wanted to hear more about the next 40. I'm going to talk about the first 10, and around the edges we can talk about those other issues. So my interest in interdisciplinary matters started in high school when I read these two books, The Two Cultures by C.P. Snow and The Challenge of Man's Future by Harrison Brown. And I note that The Challenge of Man's Future was written in 1954, otherwise Harrison would not have written Man's Future, he would have written The Human Future. But what C.P. Snow said in The Two Cultures was that the most important, challenging, and intractable problems facing civilization sit in the gulf between the culture of natural sciences and engineering on the one side and the culture of humanities and social sciences on the other. And he argued that too few people work in that gap, work in that gulf between the two cultures. Too few people have learned enough about both cultures to function effectively as intermediaries and as integrators across that boundary. And what Harrison Brown wrote in The Challenge of Man's Future is that that problem applies exactly to the problems of population, resources, environment, development, international security. Harrison Brown argued that these are all fundamentally interdisciplinary challenges. They all require an enormous amount of cooperation across the discipline and indeed across nations if they're going to be solved. And he also argued that if we don't solve them all, we won't solve any of them. That failure in any one of these challenges is going to doom the human enterprise. And reading those two books persuaded me that this ultimately is what I want to do. I read them in 1959 in high school and started plotting ways that I might be able to craft a career trajectory that enabled me to work in that gulf and work on these great problems of the human condition. So I had some terrific mentors, and one of the reasons I mention this is I think mentorship is immensely important. It was immensely important to my career, and it has been immensely important as part of what I've tried to do in my subsequent work. The mentors I had at MIT were spectacularly good. Holt Ashley in aeronautics and astronautics, Henry Kendall in physics. Both were people who had refused to confine their efforts to their disciplines. Holt Ashley was engaged in aeroelasticity. He was one of the leading aeronautical engineers of his generation, but he was also an advisor to governments. He helped establish the Indian Institutes of Technology across India. He was an advisor to industry. He demonstrated to me that one of the wonderful things about academic life is you don't really have to choose a sector. You can simultaneously be an academic, you can be engaged in the private sector, you can be engaged with NGOs, you can be engaged with government. Henry Kendall later founded the Union of Concerned Scientists as an indication of his orientation toward linking science and public policy. When I came to Stanford in 1966, I came to Stanford to work on a Ph.D. in theoretical plasma physics, not because I wanted to spend my life doing that, but because I thought that would give me credibility. If I could succeed at that, I would have enough credibility as a scientist to overcome the prejudice of the day against interdisciplinary work. The prejudice of the day was interdisciplinary work is the last refuge for people who couldn't make it in a discipline. And I wanted to establish that before I went interdisciplinary, I wanted to demonstrate to myself and to others that I could make it in a discipline. And I picked a discipline that was very important in science, but also had potential applications to the energy future through the plasma physics of nuclear fusion energy. My PhD advisor, Oskar Buneman at Stanford, who had spent time in one of Hitler's jails in 1933, understood very well the importance of scientists engaging in public policy. And he therefore endorsed something that my wife, Sherry Holdren, who's sitting in the front row and is a biologist with a PhD from Stanford, Sherry encouraged me over the dinner table because I was ranting all the time about the work that Paul Ehrlich had done on population and environment and the debates he was having with a notorious Stanford cornucopian. Cornucopians being somebody who believes that science and technology will always come to the rescue, and there's nothing serious about the global challenges of the time. And I ranted about this so much over dinner that Sherry said, you ought to write Paul Ehrlich a note and give him your thoughts about more effectively incorporating science and technology into his arguments about the global condition. As a biologist, Paul was great on the environmental dimensions. He was great on the population dimensions. But he wasn't talking enough about the roles of technology, both for good and for bad, if you make bad choices. And I wrote to Paul, and he invited me after that to a conversation in the population biology coffee room at Stanford. That conversation went on for 5 hours, and we outlined our first joint paper. Oskar Buneman, my thesis advisor, allowed me to take the time during my PhD thesis in plasma physics to work with Paul Ehrlich on problems of population, environment, technology, development, and security. And of course, doing the plasma thesis with Buneman brought me scientific credibility. Doing the interdisciplinary work with Paul Ehrlich brought me credibility in those wider domains, which was important in ultimately getting the opportunity at Berkeley. Paul's effect in joining me to other mentors was absolutely extraordinary. Paul was amazingly well connected. Some of you in this audience are old enough to recognize some of these names. David Brower, the founder of a number of environmental organizations, kicked out of the Sierra Club for his very strong views on needing to do more. Roger Revelle, who was the teacher of Al Gore at Harvard, who got Al Gore interested in climate change. Harrison Brown, I mentioned already. Harrison had written one of the books that shaped my trajectory, and through Paul Ehrlich, I ended up meeting Harrison Brown. Peter Raven, one of the great biologists of his time, together with Paul, they won the Crawford Prize, the Nobel for Biology. Don Kennedy, president of Stanford, commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, and George Woodwell, the founder of the center, originally the Woods Hole Research Center, where I succeeded him as the president in 2005. All of these people were very important in shaping my career. Some early forays into energy, environment, and policy. My first congressional testimony was in 1969, the year before I finished my Ph.D. It was testimony on whether the Congress needed an Office of Technology Assessment. And as a result of that testimony, I made a multi-decade connection with Chairman George Brown, one of the great leaders in the U.S. Congress on science and technology policy. Our relationship lasted until his death. My first National Academy of Sciences committee started in 1970, right after I finished my PhD, was on international environmental programs. It was advising the then Secretary of State, Rogers, on what the U.S. stance should be at the first UN Conference on Environment and Development, which was held in Stockholm in '72. And on that committee, I had the opportunity to work closely with Gilbert White, the great Gilbert White, geographer, expert on world water issues, and Roger Revelle, whom I've already mentioned. And my first book on technology policy was a 1971 book with Sierra Club Books, in which I wrote the half on energy technology and policy, and Phil Herrera, then the environment editor of Time, wrote about the various controversies, public controversies in the domain of energy and environment that had occurred up until then. So how ERG came to be, starting with the emergence of the vision. And here's how it happened. There were monthly dinners of a Stanford Berkeley plasma physics group. Alternating between the two campuses, we met for dinner once a month and talked about issues in plasma physics. But Ned Birdsall, professor of electrical engineering and computer sciences, a great master of computer simulation of climate change issues, was very interested in the idea of launching at Berkeley a broader effort on graduate studies in energy. And he raised in these dinner conversations that idea. And I immediately found in Ned Birdsall a kindred spirit in these issues and loved his idea of doing something big at Berkeley on this topic. When I went to the Livermore Lab, my first post-PhD job as a plasma physicist in fusion energy, the director, Ken Fowler, the head of that division, who later, by the way, became chairman of nuclear engineering at Berkeley and an affiliate of the Energy and Resources Group, Ken Fowler allowed me to work a day a week on environmental aspects of fusion and not just on the plasma physics of getting it done, and allowed me to spend a day a week teaching at Berkeley with Ned Birdsall and others interested in energy. I'll say a little more about that in a minute. But then at the beginning of '72, I took a leave of absence from the Livermore Lab and went to Caltech to work with none other than Harrison Brown, who had been the author of the book that launched me in this trajectory in the first place, on energy technology, global environment, development, jointly with the Environmental Quality Lab at Caltech, led by a former aeronautical engineer named Lester Lees. And I worked there with engineers, with political scientists, with historians, with economists, as well as with physicists and biologists. And that, again, bolstered my interdisciplinary credibility in a way that allowed the group of people at Berkeley, about which I'll say more in a moment, to successfully advance my candidacy as assistant professor of energy and resources here. So starting with that day a week I spent at Berkeley with Ned Birdsall and other people from EECS and from physics, by the way, we developed and co-taught a course called The Ecology of Power Production and Utilization on the Berkeley campus. And on the side, we brainstormed and dreamed about how we might expand interdisciplinary graduate studies at Berkeley. And then while I was at Caltech from June '72 Ned Birdsall persuaded the vice chancellor at the time, Mark Christensen, who was a geologist, to create an Energy and Resources Committee, ERC, to advise on creating a campus-wide interdisciplinary graduate program on energy. And the members of that committee were recruited from departments all across the campus. It was an extremely interdisciplinary group, as you'll see in a minute. And at Christensen's suggestion, the Energy and Resources Committee invited his friend and mentor, M. King Hubbert, the originator of the famous Hubbert pimple about how non-renewable resources would be exhausted over their lifetime, invited him as a Regents lecturer in early 1973, and he filled Wheeler Auditorium, 400 seats, for every night of 3 nights. And that demonstrated a campus-wide interest in energy and resources that had a quite profound influence on the chancellor at the time, Albert Bowker, and on others in university leadership. The original Energy and Resources Committee listed here was, as I've noted already, extremely interdisciplinary. Both leaders and young innovators from across the campus. Dick Norgard, who is here, was one of the then young innovators. It was really an extraordinary group, influential in their respective departments across the campus, and that was absolutely essential to the ultimate success. Without that group, with tentacles and influences across many of the most important departments on campus, ERG could never have been formed. So during the 72-73 period when I was in Caltech, I flew up from Pasadena to Berkeley repeatedly to meet with the Energy and Resources Committee. Ned Birdsall flew down to Pasadena repeatedly. Sherry will remember Ned and I meeting in our living room in Pasadena, brainstorming and drafting on how to structure a campus-wide graduate program, and even working out what I would teach if this all succeeded and I came as an assistant professor of energy and resources. So the committee proposed to Vice Chancellor Christensen that he support appointing me a campus-wide assistant professor of energy and resources, reporting directly to him, not to any department chair, not to any dean, not to any provost, but directly to the Vice Chancellor, and having the task of working with the committee to gain the many needed approvals. There were actually 9 university campus, university-wide, and state committees that had to approve the notion of offering a new graduate degree, and in particular, to form Berkeley's first so-called augmented graduate group. Berkeley had 30 graduate groups at the time, interdisciplinary aggregations that could admit students and grant degrees, but they depended entirely on a faculty begged, bought, and borrowed piecemeal from existing departments. There were no core faculty members whose appointments resided in the interdisciplinary unit. And the idea of the Energy and Resources Committee was that an Energy and Resources campus-wide graduate group would need some glue at the center to hold things together. And they proposed, therefore, an integrated, augmented graduate group. And I've already said this, so I'll move ahead. So Mark Christensen had no trouble, really, getting the approval of this campus's visionary chancellor, Al Bowker, and they agreed on a strategy to appoint me without the multi-year delay that getting all the approvals needed for a graduate group, 9 different committees, would necessarily entail. And what happened was, Christensen just wrote a letter as recommended by the Energy and Resources Committee and approved by Bowker, but unbeknownst to, among others, the Campus Committee on Educational Policy, without whom nothing could get done in the way of innovation on campus, Christensen just ran around them with Bowker's approval. They never heard about it. And this letter appointed me assistant professor in the Energy and Resources program, a program that did not exist except in the letter. And many people advised me to decline that offer on grounds of the dubious status of the program and the absence of any path to tenure without a department chair, a dean, or a provost to steer the case. And Bowker, Christensen, and Birdsall simply said, we'll figure it out. Bowker also said a number of other things. He said to me, at Berkeley, environment and energy make up a whole that's less than the sum of its parts, and your job will be to make it greater than the sum of its parts. The other thing he said to me is, unlike the case in typical departments, your role will include engaging with policymakers. And doing that will be part of your professorial field work. Okay, in most departments, if you spent time talking to policymakers, it came out of your hide, basically, and actually reduced your chances of getting promoted to tenure if you were doing this as an assistant professor. Bowker said, it's not going to be that way for your appointment. But because the Energy and Resources program existed only on paper, namely Christensen's letter, the question arose, who would pay for my salary, who would pay for my administrative assistant, who would pay for space? And the answer came from another visionary leader, the chair of electrical engineering and computer science, Tom Everhart, who was persuaded by the plasma physics group that I'd be a suitable addition to the EECS faculty if the Energy and Resources program experiment failed. Everhart later became, by the way, the president of Caltech, very distinguished guy, very far-seeing guy. And so I said, that's good enough for me, and I started as assistant professor of energy and resources on July 1st, 1973, without the Committee on Educational Policy knowing anything about it. So just in summary, these are some of the key figures. Al Bowker, the enabler. Mark Christensen, the bulldozer, just bulldozing over the bureaucratic obstacles. Tom Everhart, the facilitator. In the middle of it all, the architect, Ned Birdsall, without whom this certainly would not have happened. And you'll hear a little more in a moment about the gentleman in the lower right, Mark Christensen, I call the adjudicator, for reasons that will become clear in a minute. But first, when I got here, the first thing I did is I hired Lee Shipper as an Energy and Resources Program Research Assistant. He was a young Renaissance person. He was pursuing a Ph.D. in astrophysics, running a jazz band, teaching guitar at the San Francisco Conservatory, while being deeply immersed in understanding energy end-use efficiency in new ways. And he was a fabulous addition and a driver of a number of early successes. He became a world leader in that field, a major figure in the development of energy efficiency studies in the Energy and Environment Division at the Lawrence Berkeley Lab. And I also very promptly connected with John Hart, who had moved from Yale to LBL's Energy and Environment Division, a physicist, as you all know, I think, and Jack Hollander, who was the division director of Energy and Environment at LBL. By the way, they stole the name Energy and Environment ahead of us. We would have been the ERG rather than the ERG, except that LBL got there first, and ERG is such a wonderful abbreviation, of course, that we were sort of happy we lost that race. But those two, Hart and Hollander, were instrumental in supporting what was first ERP, the Energy and Resources Program, and later ERG, and both of them later became core faculty at ERG. I taught 3 courses in my first year, IDS 60, Energy and Society, lower division undergraduate, Environmental Science 102, Quantitative Aspects of Global Environmental Problems, which later I was joined by John Hart and we co-taught it, and Engineering 260, Critical Issues in Energy Technology. And again, those all had to be in other units because at the beginning, we had no privilege to offer courses in the Energy and Resources program because it wasn't yet a graduate group. But in parallel with that teaching, Birdsall and I launched an effort to secure approvals from the campus, statewide university, state legislature committees, the State Legislature Committee on Post-Secondary Education that we would need. And we got a lot of support from the members of the Energy and Resources Committee in doing that. We didn't get the last approval until early 2025. Wrong. Big typo, early 1975. I'll fix that before this goes anywhere. But importantly, in 73, 74, before we could admit our own students, the energy and resources program was discovered by and started to work with some interdisciplinarily oriented graduate students who were already at Berkeley in other departments. Kirk Smith, who was in public health, Jane Hall, who was in agricultural and resource economics, Bob Weisenmiller, who was in chemistry. Kirk was the first doctoral student I worked with here, starting in '73, finished his PhD in '77. It was in environmental health sciences, but he was an honorary ERG the whole time. Jane Hall actually moved from agricultural and resource economics and became the first PhD granted in ERG in 1977. Bob Weisenmiller finished his PhD in chemistry, but along the way got a master's degree at ERG, and Bob is here today, one of the real pioneers. Once ERG was approved, the Energy and Resource Committee became the affiliated faculty, the initial affiliated faculty. And EECS professor Alan Lichtenberg was its first chair. And the theory of the case was that the affiliates would act as a department in matters of core faculty hiring and promotion. That was how it was planned to overcome the obstacle that you didn't have a regular department chair or a dean or a provost to do this. And my review for promotion to associate professor was to be in '74, '75, because I was hired as an assistant professor 3. So I only had to wait 2 years to be considered for tenure. But there was a lot of uncertainty campus-wide about whether a tenure case for a campus-wide professorship could be done, whether it would work. And in fact, the Dean of Engineering called me to his office and said, you can be tenured Associate Professor of Engineering tomorrow if you will bring ERG with you. And by that time, the engineering leadership had decided that ERG was not an enemy, but was an ally, and they wanted ERG to become part of the College of Engineering. But even the engineers in the Energy and Resources Committee didn't think that was a good idea. And I didn't think it was a good idea because it would sacrifice the idea that everybody was a first-class citizen in respect to ERG, that there was no prime citizen associated with ERG sitting in a college, in the College of Engineering in particular, because the problem that Bowker had referred to in the first place was that engineers thought energy was primarily an engineering problem, economists thought it was primarily an economics problem, biologists thought it was primarily an environmental problem, lawyers thought it was primarily a legal problem, and what we thought in ERG is it was primarily all of the above in interaction. And so we wanted to stay independent, and that was settled. And here's where Ira Michael Heyman comes back. He had, by then, as a longtime professor of law, had ascended to the vice chancellorship when Mark Christensen became chancellor at Santa Cruz. And Heyman, lawyer that he was, settled the issue with essentially a legal white paper on the rationale for ERG being a campus-wide, have campus-wide standing, and he outlined the process by which I could be promoted. And again, that process bought the Energy and Resources Committee idea that they should serve as if they were a department, but make a recommendation in the end, he thought, rather than to him, he thought he had enough responsibilities, they would make a recommendation to the provost for the professional schools and colleges, and that's what happened. And I was promoted in spring of '75. And once Heyman wrote this white paper, there was no more argument about it. That was it. So early years, keys to why it worked. And the keys are all listed here. I'll let you read it, but they were all enormously important. Starting with the students, not least because there was nothing like us at the time. There was no other program in any major university in the country that had this characteristic of being able to look at energy issues as being right at the intersection of all these disciplines. So right from the beginning, we got an enormous number of talented applicants, and we were able to choose the best. For the whole first decade of ERG's existence, we had 10 applicants for every opening that we could offer. And so we ended up with the best. We ended up with smart, interdisciplinary, passionate students committed to the intersection of science and technology with policy around energy and environment issues. And we promoted what we called a discipline and a half model. That is, rather than making people or trying to make people jacks of all trades, we encouraged them to amplify their strengths in the disciplines with which they started, while linking those strengths to complementary areas across the divide. We provided just a few courses as the ERG glue. We were very careful not to give departments across the campus the impression that we were trying to replace them. And so we created just a few courses focused on the interdisciplinary intersection, and our students took the economics courses offered in the economics departments, they took the engineering courses offered in engineering departments, they took the political science courses offered in the political science department, and that was immensely important in gaining acceptance on the campus of what we were doing. If we tried to make the argument that the university needs to be remodeled as an interdisciplinary enterprise, we would have crashed and burned almost immediately. But by making it clear that we thought interdisciplinary work was complementary to, not a replacement for, disciplinary studies, we were able to succeed. Another thing we did is we encouraged students to design their own dissertation projects. A lot of students would come and they say, well, hand me something on a silver platter. What are you working on already that I can work on and get a master's degree or a PhD? That didn't happen very often in ERG because all of us involved in the early years were convinced that a large part of success in interdisciplinary work is choosing a project that is important enough to be worthwhile, difficult enough to help build one's career, but easy enough to be solved or at least substantially advanced in the course of one's degree studies. And in my judgment, that was very effective. Most of the ERG students did choose their own dissertation projects and succeeded at them. The other thing we did in respect to students is we kept the size, the structure, and the space of the program conducive to peer learning and support. We had such talented students, we knew that they would learn immensely from each other. We also knew that the faculty would learn from the students. And so we fostered this environment where everybody was a colleague and everybody was sitting close together, everybody communicated. Of course, the affiliated faculty could not all sit together, but because of the incredible leadership we had from the affiliated faculty and their commitment, they were constantly coming to our quarters and interacting with the students. This is just a list of some of the students with some emphasis on those who've been able to come to this event in the first 10 years or so. And I won't read this list, but it's again, a lot of the people on this list you will see around you in the room are the people who really enabled ERG to succeed, because all around the campus, when these students were taking economics courses, they were ending up the top students in the economics courses, competing with economics PhD students. When they were taking engineering courses or physics students, they were ending up the top students in the engineering or physics classes. And the same for political science. And all the professors in those courses were asking, who are these students that aren't in our department that are the most successful students we have? And that proved to be an enormous attractant to members who joined the affiliated faculty. Our students were the best recruiters. While I was there, the affiliated faculty grew from the initial dozen or so to about 100 affiliated faculty members by the time I decamped to Harvard in 1996. And the students did that. Above all, the students did it. Women were recruited in growing numbers. I mention this particularly because if you look at those early lists, there is an excessive proportion of males. And I want you to know that we recognized the deficit of the number of women who were engaged in these studies. And there were plenty of women who were enthusiastic, and we admitted a lot of them, as indicated here. And again, a number of the people on this list are in the room. I've seen Kathy Tonneson, I've seen Nikki Norman, I've seen Sasha von Meyer and Ann Kinzig. I've seen Nancy Rader, and some of the others may also be here. But again, this was enormously important to the early years of ERG, that we were successful in attracting so many women to these studies. And they, just like the men, were stars. They were excelling at everything. It was noticed all around the campus. It was absolutely essential in ERG's capacity to survive, because nobody was able to suspect that this interdisciplinary enterprise was the last refuge of people who couldn't have made it in a discipline. So why it worked? Second thing, office staff. The right staff make a huge difference. And we recruited ERG office staff. We recruited ERG office staff with all these characteristics. I won't read them to you. You know what they are. And I have to say, in my experience with the current leaders, starting with Amanda, that this tradition has continued. In my time, these are some of the women who played lead roles on the administration side. I think Susan Buller is here, and I think Betty Francis is here from that early era. But the caliber of those folks, again, was absolutely essential. You gotta have people, in a sense, running the show who are problem solvers, whose response to any question is not, here are the 17 reasons this can't be done, but we can find a way to do this. Faculty. The initial affiliated faculty, as I've mentioned, were recruited as a mix of senior leaders in their departments and young innovators. That was very important. I've also mentioned we let the students be the draw to bring in additional affiliates. We encourage team teaching of core courses and team advising of ERG theses by combinations of core and affiliated faculty. And we appointed affiliated faculty members as successive ERG chairs, which helped keep affiliates central to the ERG function. An early worry was that once you had a few core faculty members, ERG might close in on itself as a mini department, and then it wouldn't really work in the manner envisioned. And so we were very careful to make it the rule that the chairs were recruited from among the affiliates rather than the chairs being the core faculty. And later, we did have a situation where core faculty were occasionally acting chair for brief periods of time, or where they were effectively vice chair and co-chair, so that you'd have the benefit both of an affiliated chair and somebody who was sitting in the center all the time, also working in clearly a leadership role. And we also required, and Ira Michael Heyman required this in his white paper, that you had a departmental backup for appointments of core faculty. That is, a departmental backup meant that there was a department that was willing to certify at the time of appointment that if Energy and Resources Group ever went away, that department would accept the core faculty member as a member of their department at the same level, untenured or tenured. And that was both for recruiting reasons, getting people to come in core faculty roles who might be worried that this was still an experiment and maybe not as safe. And it was important for reputational reasons because, again, it underscored the notion that we were not gathering people who couldn't have made it in a discipline. ERG chairs were extremely important in those early years. The chairs that I worked with over my period of time here, 23 years, are listed here. Fantastically dedicated, committed, engaged, active folks. Every last one of them from many different disciplines is listed here. And again, from what I already know of Duncan Callaway, that is also continuing. Been very important to have great chairs. The core faculty in my time here were mostly men. The exception was Kathy Koshland, from whom we heard in the video, but that's also changed, fortunately. She was the leading edge of women in the core faculty. Mark Christensen, when he returned from Santa Cruz, became a core faculty member. Jack Hollander became a core faculty member. Tony Fisher, agriculture and resource economist. Of course, Dick Norgard, originally Energy and Resources Committee, an affiliate, became a core faculty member. Gene Rockland, who's being celebrated in one of the breakout sessions later this morning. Great group of people who, again, helped ensure that ERG flourished and grew. Another thing that was very important was what I call the LBL symbiosis. The Energy and Environment Division, initial head was Jack Hollander. Jack was on the original Energy and Resources Committee, later core faculty. John Hart, originally an ERG collaborator, later started co-teaching with me and became core faculty. That was very important. Multiple LBL, Energy and Environment Division leaders became ERG affiliates. Many UCB affiliates from the faculty had joint appointments at LBL. And this was very important. Large numbers of ERG students found their financial support and their thesis projects as Energy and Environment Division research assistants. And whenever we had students that we had admitted without knowing how we would support them, and we always bet on the come. We let lots of students in because they were outstanding, not because we already had the money. And whenever we hadn't found the money by the time they came, they became RAs at LBL because we had such good friends in the E&E division. And the students were always fabulous, so they were happy to have them. And that was immensely important to the success of the program because we could admit the best students without having to worry whether we had all the money. And finally, I do need to mention Irving Mincer, whom we called the Midnight Marauder, liberated surplus LBL office equipment to meet the needs of money-starved ERG in the early days. I don't know if Irving is here. Oh, he's back there. Yes. So. These are some of the LBL players who are important in the symbiosis. I've already mentioned Jack Hollander and John Hart. Bob Budnitz succeeded Hollander as the head of the Energy and Environment Division and was just as dedicated to supporting ERG and admitting ERG students as research assistants at LBL whenever needed. Art Rosenfeld, I sometimes call the Energizer. Art Rosenfeld was both a professor of physics and a big figure in the Energy and Environment Division at LBL, really was a builder of the energy and use efficiency program there. He worked so hard that if you went up to LBL and Rosenfeld's car wasn't in the parking lot, you knew he was traveling. If it was midnight, his car would still be in the parking lot because he was working so hard. And Art famously would hold dinners of ERG faculty members. And when you sat down at the table in the Rosenfeld residence, Art would, as soon as you sat down, pull a piece of paper out of his pocket and read you the agenda for the dinner conversation, which was all determine what further initiatives were ready to be launched. Of course, Lee Schipper, I already mentioned as well. Mark Levine ran the China program in the Energy and Environment Division, was also a vigorous recruiter of ERG students and a fabulous supporter of ERG and a faculty affiliate. I don't know if Mark is here. Guess not. So continuing with why it worked, positioning. The initial space of the program was in 112T5. The older people in the room will remember the T buildings. The younger need to know that the T building... The T buildings were World War II so-called temporary buildings, downhill from Evans Hall, which is now a grassy slope. We were later moved to bigger quarters in the adjacent barracks, 100T4, but they were really like barracks. They were two-story wood frame buildings, and they were just great for our purpose. Old buildings are a benefit for a new innovative program. There's a sense that new things happen in old buildings, while only established things get space in newer buildings. That was good for us. And an even bigger benefit, many of us realized, was that we were in those T buildings sitting geographically where we meant to sit intellectually. That is, we had life sciences on one side, social sciences on another, math and computer science on a third, engineering and physics in the other direction. So we were right in the middle of things, and that made it easy for everybody to access ERG. If we were sitting out on the periphery, it would have been much harder. Or if we were sitting in the middle of an established department, which would make it look like we were a subsidiary of that department and not a all or welcome campus-wide interdisciplinary program. So that was good, we thought. I've mentioned this already, so I'll move along. Relevance. The 73 Arab OPEC oil embargo started just a few months after the launch of the Energy and Resources Program. It was a big boost for our visibility. The ERG focuses in the early years listed here. A lot of them are still the main focuses of ERG, were at the time big emerging issues. And the fact that ERG was working on these issues and making contributions on these issues was important to our success because we were seen as relevant. The fact that we were allowed to engage, indeed encouraged to engage with policymakers as part of the mission. We had students and faculty alike in those early years in that first decade interacting with the California Public Utilities Commission, with Governor Brown directly, with the California Energy Commission, with PG&E and Southern California Edison, nationally with the Council on Environmental Quality and the Department of Energy. That relevance was important. We had been told to do it, and we were seen to be doing it, and that was a great benefit. And those engagements additionally boosted ERG's standing with the UC leadership because they provided the leadership with an answer to the question they were always asked when they went to testify before the California Legislature Committee on Post-Secondary Education. That question always was, what has the university done for us lately? It didn't matter how many Nobel laureates were here. They wanted to know, what has the university done for the state lately? And the fact that ERG was engaged with all these state agencies in a productive way was such a handy answer that we were constantly thanked by the Vice Chancellor, by the Chancellor, for providing them with the answer to that question. So some quick lessons from my experience. Visionaries and risk takers in the university leadership make all the difference if you want to create something new. Cooperation beats competition. Interdisciplinary work complements disciplines. Partnerships rock. People work harder and produce more if they're pursuing their own ideas. Grad students are colleagues, not underlings. They're colleagues from whom faculty can learn at least as much as they teach them. Diversity in gender, geography, ethnicity, and expertise is a huge asset in any team effort. I wish I could convince Donald Trump of that. And finally, succeeding at the science policy interface is harder than rocket science, but be careful whom you tell. I would find myself sometimes in conversations in the Obama White House on a difficult policy problem. And somebody in the room would say, we ought to be able to solve this, it's not rocket science. And I would say, I was a rocket scientist, and this is harder. So my final observation before turning to an addendum is to celebrate my successor, Dan Kammen, who some of you may know was just a few days ago elected to membership in the National Academy of Sciences. And as I say here, I'm thinking maybe Dan will keynote the 60th and cover all the things that I didn't by focusing on the first 10 years. Now, I do have a few remarks. And looking at my watch, I think I can get away with this. I do have a few remarks on the current crisis in science. And the first remark is Trump is threatening everything that is important to us, important to everything that ERG does, important to much of everything that the nation does. All that ERG has done, is doing, and stands for is at risk from this administration. It's clear that they're hostile to energy efficiency, to cleaner energy supply, to action on climate change. They're even hostile to adaptation. And I used to argue in the Obama administration with Republican members of Congress, you should be in favor of adaptation whether or not you believe the climate is changing. Because there have always been storms, there have always been wildfires, there have always been floods, and we've always been underprepared. We should be adapting even if you don't think climate is changing, but they were against even that, and Trump is against even that. They're against intact ecosystems, they're against environmental regulation, they're against support for the vulnerable at home and abroad, and they're against most forms of international cooperation. All that has become clear. You also all know this. They're cutting government jobs and money supporting all of this. They're cutting everything to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion all across the government. And the impacts are encompassing national labs, public and private universities, independent research centers. And by the way, they're impacting the businesses that depend on all of these other activities. Quite clearly, these folks are against science, they're against data, they're against analysis, they're against communication by anybody who has ideas contrary to theirs. They're even going after museums, libraries, and public schools. Absolutely mind-boggling. What can we do? There is one suggestion that's repeatedly brought up. It was brought up by the famous strategist James Carville in an op-ed piece in the New York Times. Let's just let Trump run amok until the 2026 midterms, when he will have distressed so many voters that the Congress will revert back in both houses to the Democrats. I think that's the wrong answer. The key points are listed here. He can do far too much damage to the economy, the environment, and the world before the 2026 midterm. And secondly, he's knocking down guardrails, the guardrails of our democracy, so rapidly that we can't be sure that there would even be a 2026 election or a valid one. Second, the courts are a better hope, but still, the courts are slow, the outcomes are uncertain, particularly with the current composition of the Supreme Court, and Trump has shown already his willingness to ignore court orders. He's defying already orders from the Supreme Court as well as many district and appeals courts. Maybe his doing so even more brazenly than so far will lift some Republican members of Congress from their stupor. We can hope so. But I think we need to understand that the best approach would be if we can somehow get a total of about 20 Republicans in the House and Senate combined to give more weight to their oaths of office than to their fear of Trump. They could, just 20 Republicans, bring Congress to the rescue. Everybody who sees the danger represented by this administration and what it's doing needs to stand up and speak out. You know, demonstrations are effective. Some people say no use demonstrating because nobody pays attention to demonstrations. That's not right. Every socio-political change that's ever been made in this country was made by a combination of bottom-up and top-down contributions. Everybody's voice matters. If enough of us... If enough of us stand up, if our universities stand up, if our labs stand up, if our schools stand up, if our NGOs stand up, ultimately the Congress will hear and we may get this done. Thank you very much. Thank you all. That really does warm my heart.
Thank you, John. Now it's time for a photo. And JLo will be coming up here to reenact this iconic 2015 photo we use many times over because it's such a lovely photo of everyone. Jayla, let us know when you're ready. So everyone that's overflowed, please fill in some spaces in the front as well. Jayla, are you good with the wide lens in the front? We'll let the AV person do that, please. Thank you.
Anyone past Duncan is hard to get.
Oh, really? Let me see. How can we do it? Anyone on the front edges may be hard to get, so maybe come into the center aisle and do a cheerleader pose. You can do one straight on, and then maybe one from an angle. Sure. We're going to do one with the phone. We're going to do one with my phone.
Do you want to see how this looks?
Sure. That looks pretty good. Yeah. I'll do one with my phone too. Okay. You ready? I got everyone. 1, 3, 3, 3.
Everyone say big event. Okay, thank you.
The 1970s photo will be taken in about 10 minutes, but we still have student and faculty. We still have more to come, so for the next item. Oh, it just kind of got chaotic. Yeah. All right, we're going up. If everyone could take a seat. Please take a seat, folks. Thank you very much. All right. I also wanted to show this photo. So John showed this photo from the last big event. But then I wanted to show that we were actually in front of him taking a selfie in 2015. So that's Kripa, who couldn't make it today, but she's one of the first social science scientists hired at LBNL. And that's me. I am a climate lead at the California State Water Board. And now to figure out how to get this off the screen. Woo, Isha's water group. All right. Let's go back to some announcements. So at 11 o'clock, we have structured networking, and Sarah's going to come up and talk about that before everyone leaves. And at 11:15, then when people disperse for networking, because the networking will be in other rooms, then we'll get the 1970s ERGs, so that'll be staff, students, faculty, anyone involved with ERG in the 1970s to come up here, and we'll take a special photo. We have lunch. It's a buffet lunch at noon. So if you are a breakout facilitator or a volunteer, please get your lunch early or allow people to cut the line if need be so you can get to your facilitator breakout sessions on time in the Social Sciences building, which was formerly Barrows Hall, where ERG used to be. Then we have breakouts at 1:30. Then there's flexible social time at 3:15. We'll have a photo booth, a literal photo booth. We're going retro. Go in the photo booth. Unlimited photos in the photo booth Amanda wants our ratio of cost to go down with each photo. So unlimited. Take your friends. 3:30 in the Howard Room. It'll be there. And also merch will be in that, there. And we'll also have social hour in the Glade, coffee, drinks, certain type of drinks. And then another big photo out there in the Glade while you're already socializing. We will gather you all together, and my partner will be coming as a photographer and taking a photo from the patio here. So Jayla, you're also doing a good job. Thanks for all your photo taking today. Jayla is an undergrad at UC Berkeley. And then we'll have the plenary in the afternoon where we have illustrious speakers will be coming as well. We'll have the in memoriam slideshow, and we'll finally do the thank yous for all the volunteers at that time as well. We'll have a plated dinner at 7, and at 8:30 we'll have a huge party. So when we're having dinner, all these chairs will be taken out. There'll be bar tables around the room. And then we'll have a special band made of ERGies and ERGI friends and spouses and friends. And certain people will be in that band. I think it's supposed to be a secret or not a secret. We'll again have the photo booth. We'll have desserts, and it'll be a good time. So now I'll call up Sarah to talk about networking.
Good Lord, there are a lot of you. All right. It is wonderful to see all of you and to get together and to have all this flexible time between all these events for all of us to reconnect with the people we spent time last with maybe years or decades ago. This next hour is not that. This next hour is focused networking session. And very specifically, you all know Duncan set it up last night about all the different parts of ERG's mission that are under attack right now, and Dr. Holdren talked about it as well. This is a tough time to be on the job market, right? We've got a lot of students coming out. We've got a lot of early career ERGies, and those of us even mid-career who are contemplating pivots. And it's a tough time to be out there. The most important asset you have as somebody on any job market is your network. And we are all each other's network. I've been so impressed with how much sharing, generous sharing everybody in ERG does with their wisdom and their network to help one another succeed, both in the program and beyond the program. So in that spirit, what we're doing here is creating an environment with just a little bit of structure to help people find the people they most want to talk to in this networking session. Also, I want to challenge all of you who are involved in the networking session to meet at least 2 new people that you've never met before. All right, so I have attempted to do something that is probably insufficient and maybe even slightly offensive by categorizing us all in different ways. So I will buy you a drink later if you're unhappy with this, but this is what we're going to do. I've got some wonderful voluntold facilitators helping in each of these areas, so thank you guys in advance. And we'll start with, this is the floor plan of the faculty club. We'll start with the justice category, topic category. That is going to be in that room over there. That's what that yellow square is. And there are some labels on a couple of different areas for sectors within the broad category of justice, government, academic, nonprofit, NGO. And so I would ask, for example, for those of you who have experience in or interest in exploring a career in those areas, to go to those areas, not just yet. Similarly, I have othered water. I'm sorry, Isha. And I've put some other categories in there with the water group that tend to also get othered within ERG, so I'm sorry. But I have given you the coolest room in the faculty club, which is the bar, which is directly behind me. So make your way there that way, and also labeled tables there. The energy category is right out on this deck here, and you can see the categories there: nonprofit, for-profit, academic, and government. And same categories inside that Kerr dining room for the broad subject of climate. If you are not going to participate in the networking session, that's fine. You can stay here. You can go out on the glade. It's actually threatening to be sunny, and or hang about and mill about in the public spaces. We welcome you to do so. But for those of you who are up for networking and willing to generously share, please go ahead and find your way to your respective areas. Thank you. Okay.
And ERGs from the 1970s, please come to the front, and we'll take a final 1970s photo.